Hey, I'm going on a tour of the United Kingdom. If you've ever been interested in that big question of God's existence, or tried to make sense of religion in the 21st century, or consciousness, or anything philosophical, then join me on stage as I try to work out some of these topics with you. I'll be in conversation with a good friend, but also bring questions because there will be an extensive Q&A, and maybe even an opportunity to hear and rate some of your philosophical hot takes. The tour dates are on screen, the link to buy tickets is in the description, and I hope to see you there. I know you know about the fine-tuning argument for the existence of God, and I don't want to just do the boring thing of just asking you exactly what you think about that, but specifically, when people talk about this, the problem that we're confronted with is that the universe abides by a certain number of constants which seem very, very finely balanced, to the degree that if you were to increase gravity or its strength by the most unfathomably tiny amount, the universe would all collapse in on itself, and the reverse is true as well. And so we're kind of typically given three options here to explain why it is that the universe is finely balanced to allow atoms to form and planets and stars and stuff. One is it's just by chance, which seems incredibly unlikely. One is that God did it, which seems maybe a bit too easy. And the third is necessity, that there's some kind of reason why it had to be that way, or maybe not a reason why it had to be that way, but it just had to be that way. Is the version of the sort of description of the laws of physics that you're describing here a version of this necessity route of saying, without sort of any reason why, they kind of just had to be the way they are? Or is it more like a chance direction where you say it's kind of just by chance, but the fact that it did happen this way, despite the odds, requires no explanation? Like, which of those sort of categories do you sort of fit into? I know it's not the God one.
Well, I think that two things. One is you left off a very promising explanation, which is the multiverse, where different parts of the universe have apparently different values for the constants, and therefore we're going tautologically to find ourselves in a part of the universe which has conditions accessible to life, right? I mean, there was never any chance that we would be having this conversation in a part of the universe which did not allow for the existence of life. So really the only question is the universe big and diverse enough to allow for life anywhere, or did we just get lucky, like you said? I don't think that there's much sensible to be said about the option that you painted as some necessity for things to be one way versus another. I don't think that makes any sense. Like I said, I think that things could very easily have been otherwise. I think that the most likely explanation for the apparent fine-tuning of constants of nature is some kind of diversity within the environments that exist within our universe. It might be literally the cosmological multiverse, where you have regions very far away where conditions are different. It might be something more subtle in the space of quantum worlds, in a many worlds version of quantum mechanics, or something like that. But that seems to be a very simple way out of the apparent fine-tuning questions. And it wouldn't be at all associated with some necessity for it to have been that way. It's literally the opposite. It's saying elsewhere, it's not that way at all.
Mm-hmm. Well, the reason I leave that out of the three options is because I see any kind of multiverse explanation as a version of the chance thing. Like, yes, it is exceedingly unlikely that the constants would be as they are, but there are exceedingly many incarnations of this universe, and so of course one of them is going to be finely tuned, and that's the one that we're going to find ourselves in. So I kind of see it as a version of the chance argument. But theists will hear you say that, and in the way that we might look to a theist and say, well, you're just kind of trying to explain away a difficult scientific problem by saying God did it. Are we here just trying to sort of explain away a difficult problem by saying that there's a multiverse? Or are there other independent reasons to already suppose that there might be such a thing?
So I think a couple things. One is I would vastly prefer to separate the two possibilities, one of which is there's a multiverse and the different constants of nature appear different locally in different regions, and therefore by a selection effect, we find ourselves in a region that is hospitable to life, versus a thing that says there's just one universe and we just got lucky that the parameters of that universe allow for the existence of life. Those are two very different scenarios, and I wouldn't want to conflate them together. I certainly don't think, and then the question, are we just sort of doing just the same thing that the theists do by invoking some mechanism to explain these apparent fine tunings. I think that there's two things going wrong with that. One is there's nothing wrong with invoking mechanisms to explain things you see about the universe. That's what science does. That's how you invent scientific theories. You try to fit the data by proposing a hypothesis or a model that accounts for that data. And if the data include the fact that the energy density of empty space or something like that could have been very different, but is just right for the allowing for the existence of complex structures that physically transmit and process information in a way that we recognize as being characteristic of intelligent life. Those are data that we should use in constructing our theories. And the other is that, as you hinted at the end there, indeed, we have reasons that have nothing to do with explaining fine tuning for expecting that there is some kind of multiverse out there. The reasons are not airtight. We really don't know for sure, but both from cosmology, inflation, string theory, all these speculative cutting edge ideas, and from quantum mechanics, like we said, the many worlds formulation of quantum theory, we get a multiverse out of theories that were invented for completely different reasons. They were not invented to get you a multiverse, but you try to follow and take seriously their implications, and you find that there is one out there. Very, very different than the story with theism. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, I think that's probably true. But then, how much stock do you place in the theistic explanation for fine tuning here? In other words, is it sort of like that's nonsense because we have this other explanation, or is it like no, this fine tuning problem does increase my credence in the existence of God? It is a sort of viable option for me. It's just like it doesn't compare to the scientific explanation. Like, where do you sort of place it on that level of convincingness?
My usual line is that I think that the fine-tuning argument for the existence of God is the best argument that people have for the existence of God. But it's a terrible argument. It's really not very good at all. And for various reasons, I'll just mention two of them very quickly. One is that the fact that the physical constants of nature are fine tuned really means the following thing. It means that they take on values that allow for the existence of physical configurations of matter that behave like living creatures, right? We metabolize, we reproduce, we process information, like we said, all of while obeying the laws of physics in a way that wouldn't have been possible if various constants of nature were very different than they are right now. That is exactly what you would expect if God didn't exist. That's what you expect under naturalism, that if you want to have life in a naturalistic cosmology, you better have some complex information processing systems, and the constants of nature better allow for those. If
Hmm.
God exists, you don't need that. God can make anything alive because God is God. I think a lot of theists really undersell God's ability to do things. I mean, generally, many of them believe that there is life after death that doesn't involve physical stuff or fine tuning at all. So, if anything, the observation that the constants of nature are fine tuned to allow for the existence of physical configurations of complex adaptive matter is evidence that should increase your credence in naturalism, not theism. And the other
Hmm.
objection is that exactly because the fine tuning argument is the best possible argument. Why is that? It's because it plays by the rules of scientific investigation. It says, here's a data point. I'm going to try to invent a theory that explains this data point. I am going to judge my theories using Bayesian reasoning. I'm going to calculate a likelihood. I'm going to say, what would the likelihood of the universe looking like this be under this particular theory? And then we'll compare it to the data. And you can do that I'm certainly happy to agree that the likelihood that the parameters of nature would allow for life would be large under theism. I think that's okay. But there's a whole bunch of other things you can ask. Should we expect the universe to look this way if theism were true? And there's a whole bunch of other features of the universe that we would not expect, like just the fact that it's big, the fact that there's 100 billion or a trillion galaxies in our observable universe. That's not what you would expect under theism, and especially the idea that human beings are somehow special in God's eyes. Now,
Hmm.
you can say, well, maybe the whole universe is special in God's eyes, and maybe we can accommodate and expect that exactly this kind of universe is what God would have made. too late, because you had the chance. For a very, very long time, cosmologically, we had no knowledge of the fact that there were extra galaxies out there, that the universe was big, that there was a Big Bang, or any of those things. You could easily have used your theory of theism to predict that that would probably be what the universe is like, and nobody did. So you can't claim now that's exactly what you would have expected under theism.
That's a great point, is that it does seem a bit sort of, shall we say, post hoc.
A little
It's
bit.
it's not strictly speaking, like irrational if you're a theist and you're confronted with this problem of a big universe. It's not enough to make you into an atheist, but to say, no, 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 this is how God would have done it. It's like easy to say now. My friend Phil Halper likes to point out that the early Christian Gnostics who believed in like the evil demiurge creator of the material universe, that the fine-tuning argument kind of fits better with that, because you've got these like meta conditions which make it really, really difficult to bring about a material world, and yet it comes about, implying that sort of the true creator of everything, the source of all being, really doesn't want the material world to exist. But this sort of evil, trickster comes in and just sets things up just right. That the fine-tuning argument kind of points a lot more strongly to something like that than it does to the God of traditional theism.
Yeah, and I think
But
the way I'm sorry, go ahead.
no, please.
I was just going to say the theists in the modern world are pushed to invent a version of God who wants to be completely invisible, right? Who wants the world just to act according to the laws of physics. And then you have to invent a reason why, oh no, God would have wanted to do it that way so that we would have no idea that God actually existed. It would be very, very trivially easy for God to let us know that God existed. Again, he's God. He can do anything he wants. There's many different versions of the universe that would fit really well into a theistic explanation and not so much into a naturalistic explanation. To be forced into the corner where, yeah, it looks like our universe always obeys the laws of physics and is governed by purely materialistic rules, but God would have wanted that way, is a little bit of a post hoc cop out.
The full episode with Sean Carroll is out right now for Substack supporters at alexoconnor.com. Although, of course, if you're watching this far enough in the future, it's also out on YouTube, and you can watch it by clicking the link that's on your screen. Even in that case, though, you should subscribe to the Substack. It supports the show, and you get early ad-free access to episodes. So do that at alexoconnor.com. Thanks for watching.